Tick tack, it's my clock telling me I should get up.
Hi, and welcome to The Conscious Loop, where woo-woo and the real world collide. I'm your host, Katrina DeAngelis. Join me as we explore what it looks like to live consciously almost always. Each episode, we dive into transforming mindsets and shifting paradigms through topics such as developing self-awareness, living authentically, communication, strengthening relationships, and leading from the inside out. If you're ready to break out of your unconscious loops and discover what else is possible, you came to the right place. You ready? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to The Conscious Loop. I'm so excited to have here on the show today Melinda Emerson, who's a small business lady. Google her, America's #1 small business expert. She is an internationally renowned keynote speaker on small business development, online selling, and marketing strategies. Her advice is widely read, reaching over 1 million entrepreneurs weekly online, and she's the best-selling author of Become Your Own Boss in 12 months. Some of the loops that we dive into today and rewire into conscious loops are moving from workaholism, been there, to balanced productivity and self-care, from solo decision-making to valuing community and mentorship, which is so important, from broad targeting to the power of niching down, and from neglecting feedback to embracing constructive insights for growth. I'm so excited to share her wisdom with you today. I know I learned a lot on the show and have personally experienced many of these breakthroughs and shifts along my personal journey in entrepreneurship, so I'm excited to share them with you. All right, let's dive in. Hi, Melinda. It's so lovely to have you here on the show. I'm really excited. Actually, it's funny. I totally forgot about this, and now I'm realizing how we actually came to this conversation. Not sure if you remember, but I had reached out to you on LinkedIn saying, I was kind of tired of hearing all of the male voices in the industry, and nothing against like Tony Robbins or Grant Cardone and all of the information they share. But I was like, I just want to hear a woman's voice tell me, like, give me some of these tips and tools. And I came across your LinkedIn page literally from Googling that. And I had just reached out to you and here we are. So it's so cool.
Well, it's always very flattering to be compared to Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone, so I appreciate that, but I am America's #1 small business expert, certainly. So I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would love for you to share, what were some of the parts of your journey that really led you to where you are today? I know you've written an amazing book. You have a podcast of your own. You're the #1 small business expert. So what was that like? What was that pivotal moment for you and that driving force behind what you do?
Well, the thing that I will tell you is that I have reinvented my business 3 times, right? So when I first started in 1999, I was a video production company. Then we morphed into a web development and video production company. And then in 2007, I read a trade journal that said, social media was going to be the next big thing. And we decided to push all our chips in the middle and pursue that. And in doing that, I became pregnant with my son. I got put on bed rest for 6 months, and I need you guys to get in your time machine with me a little bit and go back because I've been in business for 25 years, so it's been a long time. In 2005, when I became pregnant with my son and getting put on bed rest, I was just at home because Wi-Fi was not in people's houses. I had like a Palm 3 cell phone trying to run my life, and let me let you know, it didn't run so well. It was really hard, but it was also the first time I had stopped, right? I had woken up every morning on go. It finally, God was like, I'm going to figure out how to stop her, and I'm going to make her reevaluate her life and how she's doing it. And that's what happened when I got pregnant with my son, and I ended up on bed rest for 6 months. I almost lost my business that year because I had built a business that really couldn't run without me. And so what I want you to know is that I ended up really thinking about what was the right way to start a business, and it wasn't the way I did it, right? And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I mean, like I wrote down all the mistakes I had made, and it was like a mile long. It was a lot of stuff. And then I started writing down the mistakes that I knew that friends of mine had made. And I was like, "Wow, I would have run my business better if I had had better advice. But back then, there was nobody in mainstream media giving people small business advice. So I decided to put myself in charge of ending small business failure. And that is how I ended up writing my book, Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, which I did from the notes that I had created when I was pregnant. And then 2 years later, I picked them back up and created this book. And I'm so proud to say that my book, Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, it's been in print for 14 years, a nonfiction business book, been in print for 14 years. It's in its third edition. And, it has been a journey from then, from all the way back from, 2010. Well, really 2008 was when I got on Twitter for the first time, and I couldn't get my name, Melinda Emerson. It was taken by somebody else. And that was the day I became Small Biz Lady. So, like, I like to tell people that that was the best branding accident that ever happened to me, because think about it. There's thousands upon thousands of so-called and would-be small business coaches, but there is one Small Biz Lady, right? So as Beyonce says, I'm one of one, the only one, right? So I love helping small business owners. My mission is to end small business failure. I now have an education and training company, Small Biz Lady Enterprises, where we have online courses and I do coaching, and I have, you know, 1 time, 3 month and 6 month coaching programs. And we have coaches that we're certifying in my stuff. So I'm just excited. I love being an entrepreneur. And honestly, I can't believe it's been 25 years. That's like blows my mind every time I think about it.
Wow. I mean, time does really fly. And I feel like, there's moments where things happen really slowly, but then when you look back in life, it's, time really does fly.
It's like the days are slow,
Yeah.
but the years are short. It's like there were days where you were just like, "Oh my god, am I going to survive?"
Mhm.
And then you're like, "Oh, it's 2024." It's like
Here we
it
are.
felt like
And almost
it was
March
just
of
June.
2024, which is yeah, yeah,
Right. It's like
absolutely wild.
these
Yeah.
just whooping on by.
Yeah.
So you gotta make the most of it, that's for sure.
Wow, I feel so grateful to even have you here on the show, because it's funny as you're sharing, one of the things, in addition to the coaching and leadership stuff and having this podcast, I actually have a small business that I just co-founded with one of my best friends. And it was funny, we were having
Ooh.
a conversation yesterday. She took a day of rest and she really needed it, to not get to a place of burnout, because we've both been there before, where it's just go, 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 do, and then basically, you're just exhausted. And so I said to her, she was feeling guilty about that. And I said, I was like, no, like, you need to take the rest now, because like my nonna, which is grandmother in Italian, like my nonna says, if you don't take the rest, your body will take it for you. And so, really honoring that and giving ourselves that space before, so we don't hit that burnout. And so I would love for you to share, what lessons did you learn? And especially for new businesses and founders, what are some things that unconscious loops that you see as themes in your own life, and also now, the hundreds and thousands of people that you support? What are some of those themes and advice to really breaking free of those old paradigms that you can share with us for the founders here?
Well, the one thing is that you have to love something other than your business, right? It's one thing to love your business, right? You're all passionate for it, but you've got to have a life, right? If you have someone that you love, you need to make sure that you still spend time with them. I know for myself, I got to the point where like I had to get a hobby. Like I had to get something that made me get out of my office. And I actually took up golfing and I became very good at it and really enjoyed it. And every Tuesdays in the spring, to the fall, I am on the golf course every Tuesday morning until noon. And that's my thing I do for me so that I could love something other than my business, other than my family, because if you're a wife, a mother, and a business owner, you got 3 full-time jobs. And so you have to be very careful about your self-care and you have to be intentional about it. And so for me, and it took me a lot of years to learn this, right? When my first 10 years in business, I was the worst workaholic you ever met. Right. And so I had to, my name is Melinda Emerson and I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I'm not an alcoholic, but what I'm saying, I'm a workaholic, right? Which is the same level of addiction. And people don't realize that. And then there's also something about imposter syndrome that drives workaholism as well. And that is that you only get praise from work. So that's why you work all the time. And so you have to be careful about how you define success for yourself, because you will race and run and work like an animal all the time and make yourself crazy because you need that praise, you need that applause on social media. Don't fall into the hype, right? Because social media is people's personal highlight reel. There's nobody out here putting their bad day on social media unless they've had death in their family. Now, people are willing to share that, but that's it. So you really have to make sure that you are focused on what is really important and not what looks like might be important. And that's what social media can really be. I mean, comparison is evil, and it's just not worth your time. And you also don't want to be out here copying somebody else. They're already doing that. So you got to figure out how to be your own individual special self, and that's what you got to do. And so for me, that those are some of the lessons that I've learned, over the years in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something really important about social media. And I'm curious your perspective on this because, on one hand, it's like as an individual, we have to be really careful about what we consume and like the comparison piece and all of that. There's also this growing trend with the new generations of not even really trusting media or marketing or online sources. And then as a small business, social media a lot of the time is your actual tool to speaking to your audience. And so I'm curious how to balance that for new businesses of using social media as a platform and the best ways to sort of go about that while still not letting it impact your own soul, and also knowing that there might be some mistrust in marketing messages and things. And so really staying authentic and walking that sort of really fine line, it feels like.
Well, for one, I do not share anything that's not strategic, right? I have a longtime partner. I've shared his picture a couple of times. No one even knows his name unless they actually know him, right? So you have to be selective about what you share. When I go on vacation, I might show a picture of my feet in the sand, but I'm not telling you where I'm at. You know what I mean? So you got to be like, you got to think about, you want to share that you're out and that you do things, but you don't have to give everybody the full play by play, right? So I think that one of the things you can do to be really healthy about how you leverage social media is really only focus on one or two platforms. You don't need to be on 5 or 6 platforms. You don't need to be shaking it on TikTok if that's not where your people are, right? So you need to focus on one or two social media sites, and they should be the one or two where your best target customer spends the majority of their time online. Don't use Facebook because you like Facebook. Use Facebook because that's where your fish are. And I think that's one of the best ways to kind of keep it in perspective. And then survey your folks. Find out what kind of content they like. Give the people what they want, right? You don't have to do everything. You have to just do the thing that your people want. And that's how you can really leverage it the right way.
Yeah. It's funny. Before this call, I actually went to go make the business account on TikTok, and I'm so resistant, even though I know it's where my audience is. And it was like, it gave me like an error message. It was like, we cannot complete your account at this time. I was like, it's a sign, getting rid of it, not doing it. And I was like, oh, that's probably not actually the sign, but I should look at that.
Oh, well, Instagram may work just as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly. We're on Instagram, but got to move to the TikTok. Yeah, no, and I so appreciate that. It's a reminder too that we are, we're founders and we're consumers. So when we're consuming, being aware of that dynamic that not everybody's showing their whole life on social media. So don't assume that. And then also speaking to our audience and asking what the
Or
audience wants.
staging. But the other thing too, you got to be careful, is people are staging their life. People are renting planes and renting cars, pretending that they live like that. So that's the thing that's what makes everybody now leery of what they're even looking at, because you got people actually pretending.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
you gotta be, you're right to be skeptical of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
Absolutely. And I think like we want to believe everyone is inherently good and doing good, but when things are being staged, it's very hard to really believe that to be true. And so what are some I'm curious because you mentioned the book, right, being out for, I think you said it was 15 years and there's been 3 editions of it. And so I would imagine there's a lot of core messages that are just like timeless, right? And then probably
Yeah.
some that are specific to this new age, right, with social media and technology and all of that. So what are some really core foundational pieces that have just stayed consistent and timeless, and then those maybe couple that are new to this, new generation.
Sure. Well, the core theme in my book is the Emerson planning system, which is my 6 step system to transition from having a job to starting a business. The first thing I tell people who want to start a business is that they need to think about their life first. What do you want and why do you want it? You need to figure that out because sometimes you might just need to go get another job because you have a jerk boss, right? So you really have to get clear about what you want, right? What kind of life do you want, right? Because a lot of us as women in particular, we're working on everybody else's agenda and not our own. So you need to make sure that you know what your new agenda is going to be as an entrepreneur. The second step in the Emerson planning system is financial. Like you got to figure out how you are going to come up with the money to launch your business because here's a news flash, banks do not loan money to start up businesses. Your money to start your business is going to come from you, your right or your left pocket, right? So you got to look at your savings, your credit, your debt, and you got to get rid of credit card bills and stuff like that. And guess what? Drinks are much cheaper when you pour them at home yourself. So you got to figure out how you're going to spend your leisure time, looking at how you spend money. Like if you've got a latte a day habit, that is something you could stop doing and save that money to start your business, right? So I really walk people through, thinking through their finances and how they spend money to get themselves in a position to start their business. The third thing is I really have people validate their business idea based on what skills they have versus what skills they need to run their particular business. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that you really have to figure out who that paying customer is, right? Because if everybody can use your product or service, no one will, because no one will think you're even talking to them, right? So you really want to niche down as much as you possibly can because there is riches in the niches, y'all. All right. And then you've got to, once you get your marketing plan together and you know who that customer is, you know where she spends time online, you know what her aspirational goals are, what her barriers are, right? Those are the things you got to know so that you can develop a real marketing message. Then you've got to write a business plan. And I mean, there's all these people that want to tell you now that you don't need a business plan. But let me tell you something. You have to plan for success. It will not just happen to you. It's not a napkin kind of a thing. Now, do I think it needs to be a 40-page manifesto? No. But do I think you need 10 good pages that are going to describe how your business runs? Yes, I do. And more than that, it's a living, breathing document that you should be updating 2 to 3 times a year. Because your first business plan is a hypothesis of what you think is going to happen. You really can't adjust your business plan until you have data, a la customers, so that you understand who your niche customer really is, what they are willing to pay, and what your sales cycle is to close them. Once you get that information, you can go back and refine and tweak. But a lot of times people write a business plan and they treat it like a historical document, right? They throw it up on the shelf like it start collecting dust. And I'm like, no, you wrote a business plan, use it to run your business. And the last thing that I always tell people is lunch while working. I'm a big fan of side hustling. I will never tell somebody quit a job to start your business. No, because it takes, first of all, 12 to 18 months for a business to break even, let alone replace your corporate salary. So what you have to understand is you're probably not going to be able to take a regular paycheck out of that business until year 2 or 3. So you have got to keep those paychecks rolling and that health insurance paid by somebody else as long as you possibly can. Because when you cut them paychecks off, they're off. So that is the core manifesto of become your own boss in 12 months is just that.
Yeah. Wow. So, so, so helpful. And especially, I mean, going back to the social media aspect of like, we often see the end result. It's like, oh, starting a business means like this new lifestyle and all these things that I want and desire. And it's like, there's
There's a
like,
few years before you gonna get that. It's hazing process
yeah.
involved.
And
It's starting.
is that why most small businesses fail, do you think? Because I know, part of what
Sure.
you're passionate about is helping, making sure that small businesses don't fail. Do you find that failure is always a direct result of not doing those upfront steps that you had just mentioned?
Bro, yeah. I mean, if you don't plan, then you plan to
Mhm,
fail is basically, the deal. But there's specific reasons why small businesses fail though. The number one reason though is because people don't have a realistic view of what entrepreneurship is. Like for some reason they think they're going to have more time to pick the kids up at the bus stop. No, you're not. Like so you have to really understand what it is to be an entrepreneur. It is a lifestyle, it is a commitment. It's amazing if you can survive it,
mhm,
right? But it is hard. It is not for everybody. The second reason why small businesses fail is because people don't save enough money, right? So if you run out of cash, you basically run out of runway, right? Your business is an airplane and you're trying to take off, but like if you run out of cash, that's like there's a cliff coming. There's a cliff coming, and you might have business, but if you don't have the cash to fulfill the business, it doesn't matter, right? The third reason why small businesses fail is because people won't niche. They chase anybody that they think has customers, that has money as a customer, as opposed to really focusing on serving a specific niche audience. The fourth reason why small businesses fail is because people have a fear of math. So they don't know what's going on in their business financially because they, don't have a budget, don't use one, they set their pricing based on what the competitor's website had. They really don't know their numbers. And that is dangerous because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know if you're making a profit in every sale. And that is a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous way to be. And the last reason I would say why people go out of business is because they spend too much time focusing on new business as opposed to nurturing existing business. Like the first time you make a sale, you're only 5 to 20% likely to close it. If you go after existing customers, you can close them 60 to 65% of the time. So why in the world would you spend all your time and money chasing the most expensive sale you're ever going to make versus nurturing your existing customers, getting them on an email list, communicating with them on a regular basis, and getting them to buy you and not only buy from you, become an advocate for you, become a raving fan about your brand and love you so much. They're like, that small biz lady, she is amazing. Oh my God, I read her book. I went to her live event. I listened to her podcast. She's amazing. Like that's what you want people to say. You don't want people to buy something once and be like, yeah, we'll find another vendor next time. That is not it. Like you got to nurture your existing customers if you want to create a sustainable small business.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there was one question, I feel like you're kind of alluding to the answer right now. Relationships are so important, and like brand experience or customer experience, all of these things are so important. And so I'm curious, what are the most underrated tactics that founders can employ for organic growth direct to consumer? So when we think about that organic reach and building those customer relationships, like what are some underrated tactics that are actually probably key to the success?
I would say implementing a recency strategy. And what that means is like within, if you have a product based business in particular, within 4 to 7 days of someone receiving their product, they should hear from you. They should be asked, how did you like it? Is it working? Do you need any help using it? If not, can you please give us a review about your experience with our product? It's such a little thing, but if you got really, really rigid about asking for feedback, asking for a review, you would be amazed how your business will grow organically just from all of the reviews, or how you can get better from honest feedback from a client who's angry. Like people get upset about angry clients, but I'm always like, look, an angry client is actually a gift. Like honest feedback is a gift. That's an opportunity to get better or retrain your team or to make more public your return policies or whatever. Like you just have to make sure that you listen to why people are mad, right? Because somebody's usually pretty upset if they spend the time to write a bad review. And you need to find out why. And you need to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, I mean, you mentioned something earlier as well that that was important. It's like your business is always going to be evolving, and so you need that feedback, I guess, really to evolve and really to understand what your customers need and want, because you might learn, and this is actually because you mentioned niching as well. How do you start versus evolve? So when you think about picking a niche, but then knowing that it's going to be a process and you're going to learn from your customers and all that, do you pick one to start and then evolve as you grow, or do you leave it a bit more open and evolve as you grow? Mhm.
No, you wanna focus on a specific niche, and as your business and services evolve, your niche will too, right? So for my business, my first business, we are a marketing consulting firm. We work with Fortune 500 brands that target small business owners. But then we also have Small Biz Lady Enterprises, which is our education and training company that educates, trains, develops curriculum and courseware to train small business owners. So those are two different, but we didn't have this one at first. We started with this one. And then because of the success of my book and my brand, we ended up creating this one. Right. So things will evolve over time, and what makes sense will make sense at the time, right? You can't see it all at the beginning because it's too much to really consume. But if you continue to grow, you continue to read, you go to professional development conferences and stuff, and you pay attention to industry trends, you'll figure out the next step. You'll figure out the next audience you should be serving for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine you didn't know that maybe that second audience would be your next move, but it sort of happened along the way through listening.
That's I'm a very accidental small business coach.
Yeah, and I think that's a skill set in and of itself, right? Like being willing to be flexible and iterate and things like that. And you know, how can founders and small businesses do more of that? Because I find, through talking to people that have really great ideas or small businesses, and I've even seen myself kind of going into this, you can get really attached to an idea or an ideal outcome, or like how you see it changing the world and all of that sort of thing. And so how do you still stay true to like that maybe purpose and passion, but being willing to challenge your mindset and shift your old paradigms to make sure that you're continuing to iterate and evolve and not just be stuck to something in tunnel vision?
Well, I think the number one thing you have to be as an entrepreneur is coachable. And you have to stay humble and hungry, especially as a founder, especially in the early, because if you already know everything, people gonna let you walk right out there and crash because they're gonna be like, oh, okay, watch this, So you don't want to ever come off like that. You always want to come off like, what can I learn? Look people up, find out what they've done, ask them good questions about how they got where they are, right? That's how you want to be as a young founder, because you definitely need to be a sponge, because there's people that have forgotten more than you know. So you do not want to come off like this arrogant, early stage entrepreneur, because people will let you crash.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important. I see that in my work in with leaders as well. And leadership is I didn't quote, I don't know who said this, but I know I've heard it somewhere. It's like the more you know, the more you realize you don't actually know. And so leaders who are, think or are showing up in a way that is like, I have all the information or I know things, it's usually coming from a place of the paradigm of, well, I'm a leader, I should know. So therefore I shouldn't say that I don't know. But then it actually kind of does the opposite, right? Like great leaders are the ones that are willing to say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out, or let me go find that out for you, right? And that has to transition into the founder's mindset as well. Like it's okay to not have all the answers. We'll figure it
I
out.
I agree with that, but I also wanna go one step further. You asked me earlier about what is some of the new stuff that I put in
Mhm.
my book, as, in the 15 years as I first wrote it, and I was very intentional about adding a chapter on leadership, and the reason why is because people who own businesses think they're leaders, and I'm like, "No, no, you're just a business owner. Leadership is something you actually have to work on." I have taken leadership, Urban League Leadership Institute, Leadership Inc. Like, I have been very intentional about learning how to be a better leader. If you talk to people who worked for me 25 years ago and talk to people who work for me now, they'd be like, we don't know that lady that we worked for 25 years ago because she was intense. You know what I mean? So it's like I have learned to be a servant leader. I've learned to be a coaching leader. You don't come out the womb knowing that. You got to work on that. And so that's something that I applaud people who are intentional about learning how to be better leaders in their business, because you set the culture. If you come to work late, people gonna think people can come to work late, right? If you are nasty and crazy to people, that's how everybody else is going to be. And then people are going to be afraid of you, which is like a culture of fear is never a good culture, right? So you have to be intentional about learning how to communicate effectively and how to help people be their best selves and what they care about. It's like Zig Ziglar once said, when you figure out how to support people with what they care about, they'll worrying about what you care about, right? So you can't just treat your employees like, I pay you, go do this work. No, you got to get interested in your people. You have to invest in your people. You have to listen to how their weekend was and be interested, right? That stuff is important because everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel heard. And you have to do that as a leader very intentionally.
Yeah, wow, I'm so happy that you shared that as well because I'm super passionate about the culture space and leadership. And I think that, it starts with the individual. And I love that you said you can be a business owner, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader. It takes work to almost, to own that and to really be the best version of yourself so that you can also lead. And that ripples outwards into your team, into the business, into your customers and your clients, stakeholders. Like it's going to ripple outwards completely. And I think, I've worked so much with corporate, and I think oftentimes smaller businesses that I've seen around like the 10 to even like 200 person mark, they don't do that culture work and leadership work until it's necessary and needed, right? It's like you start to see maybe signs of a toxic culture, and then it's like, oh shit, gotta like do some culture work.
Well, a lawsuit,
Yeah.
lawsuits make me, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you really have to be intentional about it from the
Mhm.
beginning. And that's why I actually added a whole chapter about it in my book,
Mhm.
because I realized over the years, like, what was the thing that I didn't catch on to early enough? And it was absolutely leadership. It was absolutely communication styles and really understanding the power of using like discs to like understand the personalities of the people that are working with you, and really understanding everybody's love language, right? So just like we have love languages with our partners, our staff have love languages too. Some people want money, some people want time off, some people want public recognition. You have to figure out what their love language is and how best to communicate with them to get the most from them. And just like if you have multiple children, they have different personalities. Well, guess what? So do your employees, right? So I think it's important for this stuff to be talked about, because I think corporations talk about it because they have the luxury of HR departments and culture departments and all, but little businesses, they're just trying to make that money. They're just trying to get things done. And culture seems like this she foo foo thing that you don't have to really care about, but you do.
Yeah.
And so I applaud the work that you do as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I work with, I haven't worked with DISC, but I work with Core Strengths, which is one that's similar. And I love it because it shares, how do you show up your best? How does somebody else show up their best? And then how do you leverage that space in between? Because that's like a co-created entity, is that space in between the energy of your team, the energy of your business. And that part is so important. You said some people want money, some people want recognition. We can't treat people, and again, this is another quote, like we can't treat people the way that we want to be treated. We have to treat them the way that they want to be treated. And oftentimes leaders say, I don't understand why my team isn't motivated, or, they don't seem to enjoy their bonus that they got. Like, they're not grateful. Like I hear all these things and I'm like, well, did you actually ask what would be important to them? Like, what do they care about? What's going to be beneficial for them? And I think that's such a, curiosity is a superpower, and it can be used with your team and with your own personal discovery as well. So I love that you've added a whole chapter to your book on that.
I had to, because I realized I was like, I had to look in the mirror. Sometimes you got to start with the man in the mirror,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
started with me, and then I said, okay, I need to share this because more people could benefit from this.
Absolutely.
So,
And, last question that I love to, and then I'll ask if there's anything else you wanted to share, but I love to ask this question. It's what unconscious loops did you have to shift to really be this version of yourself? And we're always iterating and we're always kind of evolving. But really, to get to the place and the woman that you are today, what are some of those core unconscious loops that you had to shift out of or break free from?
Well, I think the biggest one was I had to realize that nobody's opinion was more important than mine. Like when I was young, I used to seek feedback, right? And I would let feedback, from my former spouse or from, other friends or mentors guide what I thought. And I didn't trust myself enough. And so I don't do that anymore, obviously. But I think as a young woman in my 20s, like if I could go back and talk to myself 25 years ago, what I would say is, you are already enough. It's okay to ask questions and act like you don't know things because you can't know everything. And I think that insecurity and imposter syndrome is like kind of part of that stuff too. But I had to learn to trust my own advice, my own opinion. And that was probably the biggest shift for me going from, I would say, my mid 20s to my mid 30s. It was like, oh, yeah, my opinion is good enough, actually. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So that was probably the biggest thing.
Well, that's like a mic drop moment right there. Like, I just received that wisdom as well, and I'm excited for my audience to receive that as well, because I think that's so, especially today there's so much information out there, and that's great. And you have to be discerning and in-source what's actually true for you. And so to learn that lesson is so powerful, because in a way you're recognizing that the power is you, right? It's not outside, it's in you. And so that's such a
Right. I mean, every story we've ever seen, right? When Dorothy wanted to go home at the end of The Wizard of Oz, what did the good witch tell her? You had the ruby slippers on. The ruby slippers were the key to go home. Click your heels 3 times, you can go home. Right? So it's like every parable out there, whether it is the Lion King, right? And Mufasa coming to his son and saying, Simba, remember who you are, right? I mean, it is all about you remembering the razzle dazzle that is inside you, right? It's really what it's about.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I mean, that is such a beautiful gem to end on. But I do want to ask, is there anything else that you didn't get to share that you would like to share? And then how people can stay in touch with you? And I'll leave everything in the show notes for the audience as well.
Well, one of the biggest things that I help people with is becoming a brand in demand. And I have a brand in demand group coaching program that you can find on my website at smallbizladyuniversity.com. If you want to follow me on socials, I am Small Biz Lady everywhere. And on TikTok, I am the Small Biz Lady. Certainly, you can connect with me as my government name, Melinda Emerson, on LinkedIn. And I have a podcast called the Small Biz Chat Podcast. So you can subscribe and listen to it. I love to interview experts that give wonderful, actionable advice. So I drop a new episode every Wednesday. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Super grateful for you and for the universe for allowing my Google rabbit hole to lead me to you. And so I look forward to continuing the conversation in different ways and spreading this with my audience.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Like what you heard and want more? Stay connected with our community on social media using the links below. Like us on your favorite podcast provider and sign up for the Conscious Loop newsletter, where we only send you goodies with one intent: to break your unconscious loops. If you have an unconscious loop you want to break free from, let us know so we can feature that loop on the show. Info and show notes, and we'll see you next time in the Conscious Loop.